So at Berkeley, we've made changes in our marketing program to focus on marketing communications. So those of you guys who are moving forward in the marketing discipline, you're going to see a real emphasis on MarCom. And there are several different tools in marketing communications. I want to talk just a little bit more specifically today about advertising. And now I know that we have a really strong gut reaction in terms of what advertising is. So don't get me wrong. It's not that I think you don't know what advertising is, but sometimes we need to just get a little bit more formal in terms of the term when we're moving into our industry related study and also our careers. Because there are, important ways to think about advertising, and there are things that we need to distinguish advertising from other tools in the MarCom mix, specifically public relations, which is something that kind of confuses us a little bit, and we'll do a video on public relations also, so we get the idea of what is that and how is it similar to but different from advertising. And the thing that distinguishes advertising is that it's paid, right? And it's mediated. So we buy some form of media and we produce a message. A brand has complete control over its advertising message. So what you see in an ad is what the brand wants to say. Like for better or for worse, right? We might read into that message one way or another. So we might think of it as having different meaning than the brand thought that it was going to have. But the brand has complete control of that. So it's a paid, mediated form of communication from an identifiable source. We need to know the brand, or it just is kind of silly if we don't, designed to persuade the receiver to take some action now or in the future. Now let me just add, persuade, yes. But also remember that advertising can do two other things. Advertising can also inform us, and it also can remind us. So if I had to kind of revise this, and I probably should have done that before I sat down in front of my video camera, but I would probably say adding here, designed to inform, persuade, or remind. So remember that there's always three key functions or objectives that you can achieve through advertising: informing, persuading, and reminding. Now let's take a look at advertising in practice, right? What if you wanted to go and work in advertising? Typically, advertising is separated into two distinct groups. You have what's known as the agency side. So advertising is structured around advertising agencies, and the client side. So the client side are brands. Brands go into the marketplace and hire advertising agencies who have expertise in the things we just saw, right? The communication messages, choosing the mediated sources, so making decisions about media. Agencies have all of that expertise. So the client hires the agency to perform advertising tasks. What's kind of interesting is I worked in advertising. I was on the agency side, and every day I went to work, I always wished that I worked on the client side. And you're going to find that people who work at an agency always kind of want to get to the client side. It's seen as grass is greener, I think. I never really knew anybody on the client side, though, who wanted to go and work on the agency side. When you work at an agency, it's a hard job. You have a customer that you need to satisfy, a customer that you need to communicate with at least 40 hours a week, if not more than 40 hours, because, these are tough jobs and it's not a 9-to-5 kind of deal. It's often extended hours, etc. But it is a fun and it is a fast-paced kind of environment, and a lot of people find it to be really enriching. Now, there's one other group that kind of adds a little bit of a fun and challenging twist, and these are vendors. Vendors could be printers, vendors could be other marketing communications agencies. I mentioned public relations before, but a vendor works for the client, but you still, as the agency side, you still have to deal with these vendors. So they kind of throw a little bit of a curveball, and there's an additional aspect, a challenging aspect to manage. Anytime you have different groups that you're trying to coordinate, it's always going to be a really difficult task. And that's probably one of the more difficult tasks on the agency side. We're going to see that there's three distinct areas within an advertising agency. I'm starting with this marketing or this management group. I might call it account services. My experience in advertising was in the marketing management side of it. I was what you call an account executive. The account executive is typically a kind of mid-level manager of accounts. So the account executive has day-to-day connections with the client, phone, email, in person, faxing, whatever it takes. You're constantly there to make sure that your client's work is getting done. So the account executive really needs to understand and be a good manager. You're trying to manage all the different aspects within your agency. You're trying to manage things that are going on at vendors, and all of this is kind of encapsulated in your relationship with your client. So you have to manage all the different pieces to the puzzle that deliver satisfaction to your client. The second group within an advertising agency I wanted to call out is the media group. So you've got your marketing group, which does like account services, and then you have your media group who does all the media planning and making sure that you're choosing the right media to reach the right target audience, and also managing the budgets behind that. So we see this being kind of divided between two different people. We have a media buyer. Media buyers are kind of paperwork people. They fill out these things called insertion orders, which make sure that the media get ordered. It also makes sure that the media gets paid for. So the media buyer is big on the budget side of things. They're also big on the paperwork side of things, and really the nuts and bolts of managing the buys themselves. It's usually a lower level position than, say, a media planner. A media planner is far more strategic in their thinking. They have to think about who is our target audience, what kind of media does this target audience consume, and then they need to then make the media plan. So they have to figure out, okay, these people are watching MTV, so what shows on MTV do I need to buy ads in? And does this all fit with our budget? So the media planner is also big on budgets too. The last group that we want to talk about is our creative group. And obviously, this is who we think about when we think of advertising, is who's making the ads. So the creative team is typically made up of two people, your art director and your copywriter. One's in charge of visuals and layouts, and the other's in charge of words. So the art director does all of that artistic stuff. They choose what images go into an ad. They're in charge of the photo shoots. They choose color schemes. They choose the layout, all that kind of good stuff. And then the copywriter is in charge of all the words. So really, when you think about things like slogans and jingles, dialogue in a TV commercial, a lot of that stuff, or all of that stuff, is coming from a copywriter. They work really close together. So depending upon the team that you might have, some art directors might do some copywriting, and some copywriters might do some art direction, but that's kind of depends upon the team that you're dealing with. So as you can see with advertising, there's a lot of opportunities for jobs in advertising, whether on the agency side or the client side. We do see far more jobs on the agency side because there's a lot of agencies, and it's a labor-intensive kind of activity. So just right in one agency, you know that you're going to have at least 3 groups of people that, there's got to be jobs there. You need account executives, you need media buyers and media planners, you need art directors, you need copywriters. Whereas on the client side, they might have one advertising manager who is there to liaison with the agency side. So in a nutshell, this is how advertising is structured. Clearly, we'll talk more about how advertising works in other forms of communication.